I am sure you have all heard the question, what is I am sure you have all heard the question, what is the scariest animal? I mean, it is one of the greatest icebreakers, at least in my opinion. And some of the more common responses to this are things such as snakes, sharks, spiders, crocs, bears, etc. Now, these answers are fair. They all can be quite scary. But really, statistically, there is only one true answer. And no, it's not mosquitoes. Rather, other humans. No animal causes ourselves as much pain as, well, ourselves. And every year, at least 475,000 people are killed by other humans. And mind you, this is not including war, car crashes, accidents, or the transmission of contagious diseases, which would then put the number in the many millions. And so not only can no other animal compare to this by numbers, but also not by brutality. Because without going into too much detail, I'm sure most of you already know how brutal humans can be. However, for as bad things can seem today, in some ways, I much prefer the present over the past. As back in the day, people could be quite, out of control. And there is no better evidence for this than real-life discoveries which document ancient human violence, which was in some cases so grim that it honestly makes horror movies.
Sokolov opens with d4, Centovich replies d5, then c4, and that's the Queen's Gambit. Declined. Both horses out now in the double clop-clop defense. Sokolov takes on d5, Centovich with a recapture, then a hairline fracture, Cleopatra coming at ya, Margaret Thatcher in a dacha. King fling, diagonal wingding, and then Socrates in a g-string. Declined. Now slide to the left, 2 hops this time, Charlie Brown. Next, a vulgar gesture from Sokolov. Centovich counters by stamping on his opponent's foot. Sokolov has turned his attention to the crowd to romantically proposition Centovich's mother, and is quite understandably declined. Then the Bidlington Todger Scrambler, the French Judi Dench, the Croatian Crustacean, and piss in a plastic cup and give it to a vicar. Now the traditional 30 minutes for Jaeger bombs, 20 minutes for random moves, and Centovich informs his opponent he is a despicable troglodyte who probably shags pelicans. Then takes, snakes, frakes, 30 love, and by jingo, that's number wang. Now, Centovich breaks into Sokolov's house and licks all of his fruit. Unconventional move there. Sokolov files a restraining order. Centovich assembles a small militia of armed capybaras. Sokolov petitions the UN for a nuclear strike. Centovich contacts extraterrestrials for assistance, but last night was a wild one. Sokolov initiates a blood pact with Lamashtu, the Mesopotamian goddess of pure evil, and summons the malevolent forces of hell. Very cheeky. While Centovich assumes control of the laws of nature, destabilizes the Higgs field, beginning the collapse of physical reality, also known as the extra fluffy German Spitz apocalypse, leading us to the obvious question: who actually enjoys playing this fucking game? It began about 1500 years ago in India with a game called Chaturanga. You can still play it today. There's no queen, but there are elephants, and in the unlikely event that you have 3 friends, there's a 4-player version. Lovely. Anyway, it ended up in Persia a century or so later and evolved into a similar game called Shatranj. It was the Persians who introduced the idea of checkmates, from shah for king and shahmat meaning the king is boned, ending the game. Next, Emperor Timur popped up in Central Asia and threw in giraffes and camels and war engines. Then the Chinese added cannons, toot. And finally Europe got its feudally little hands on the thing and brought in castling and 2 square advancing pawns, and by the 1800s it was more or less the rules we despise today. So this cack-handed liability is the king. He can do a staggering 1 square move in any direction. And this is the queen. Originally, the queen was called the advisor and could only move 1 diagonal square, but the 15th century was a time of powerful ladies, particularly Queen Isabella of Spain, and it's possible that Spanish scholars turned God mode on for that piece in honor of her. Today, she can do whatever she bloody likes. Then there are the knights, who have always taken the L like this. You might say, does that look like a knight? Really? What kind of mentalist was giving military titles to animals? Well, this is Staff Sergeant Reckless. No, this is Staff Sergeant Reckless. She fought in the Korean War, and the US Army was so impressed they promoted her twice. Then this is Niels Olaf, a brigadier in the Norwegian King's Guard. And this is William Windsor, a goat who was a lance corporal in the British Army, though after headbutting a drummer during the Queen's birthday party, what the fuck, William? He was demoted down to Fusilier. Some animal lovers protested, and luckily his rank was reinstated. So why shouldn't horses be knights? Don't you feel like a bastard now? Then there are the bishops, zipping about in the diagonals. Originally in chess, bishops were elephants, but we don't really do war elephants in Europe, so that got dropped. And finally, there are the rooks, or castles, originally called chariots, who can only move vertically and horizontally like so, and oh god, I'm so sorry about this. Maximilian, you're fired! Today, there are lots of variations of chess. Fischer Random, where the back rank pieces are scrambled. Anti-chess, where the goal is to lose as hard as possible. I know the feeling. Then there's chess on a really big board, which is perhaps the most straightforward wiki title since Death by Coconut, or Feast of the Ass. Anyway, it's been centuries, and of all games, why do humans still like this one? Well, for one thing, chess is really useful for metaphors. Islamic philosophers thought that it taught patience and reasoning. For fighty Europeans, it was a miniaturized battleground. Today, it could apply to anything. For example, there's Zugzwang, which is where you find yourself in a position where every move is a bad one, but you have to move. Sounds a bit like life. Or how the game is a collaboration, but ultimately you're completely alone in your mistakes. You know, like life. Speaking as a minus 18,000 ELO shit player, I quite like the feeling when you end up in a position with too many moving parts, with each choice as a door before you, and you have very little idea of what's coming next. Because at that point, you have stepped into a million uncertain futures, like life. Chess looks like a board game, but it's an infinity simulator. That's what it does. That's probably why humans enjoy it so much. Says who? Says me. I just wrote it down. Take it up with my mum. It teaches humans how to confront the horrible infinite. And on that note, let's say you're chronically unemployed on a Tuesday afternoon and you've ended up playing chess online against some random whoever, and your opponent captures your knight. How would you continue in this